So the first board that I recapped was board A, which was the board with the sliders. And while I had that board out, I decided to install the slider Synthchaser LED slider kit. We got in there some of the sliders. It looks like something had actually spilled in there. So these old where's the one with the goop on it? Some goop had spilled in and got the circuit board dirty. So we changed these, and there's a separate video that you can watch on how to install this, and I recapped that board while I was at it. But we took care of our scratchy slider problem. And the glide off a little bit. So these are super smooth and they look really cool, and it did take care of our scratchy slider problem. So now we're going to continue and recap the other boards, and I'll round up with you when that's done. So we've got to board C now. The C is the board with the submodule for the voltage control filter. And the kit that I sell in my store for the capacitor kit doesn't include the capacitors that are on here, because this module varies from model to model. So this is a later ARP Pro DGX, and it uses the 4075 filter. And the 4075 filter actually had a design flaw that limited the frequency response up to about maybe 12 kilohertz. So basically, with the VCF, with the stock VCF, you can't get a very bright sound out of any of the ARPs from this era. So there's the Pro DGX, there's the Omni 2, the Quadra, Odyssey Mark II, and our Mark III. They all use this filter, and they all suffer from that problem. So I sell a kit that fixes that cutoff error, and also includes the capacitors to recap this module. So if you have a Pro DGX, you might want to look for that too. To get the VCF off, you turn it over, and they have these long pins that you just desolder and then bend back, and you can remove the submodule. So I'm going to do, since I have this board out, I'm going to not only recap the board, but I'm also going to fix do the enhancement on the VCF while I have the board out. You can kind of see here there's some strange jumper wire. When I got to the switchboard for the touch sensor effects, basically someone had made a mess of the board reworking it. There were jumper wires and lifted solder pads everywhere. I actually had to leave one capacitor in place just because I couldn't really remove it safely. It was kind of underneath a switch, and the switch and the capacitor and the socket next to it that was kind of walling it in, they all had damaged pads that someone had crudely repaired. So I didn't want to mess with that, so I left that one capacitor in place. And you can see here someone has replaced one of the tantalum capacitors at some point with an electrolytic. So someone's been working on this, and I'm just going to change all the capacitors here. Hopefully, you know, on none of the other boards I'm going to find a mess like I found on that touch sensor switchboard. But I'll touch base with you once I get this done. So this is the 4075 voltage controlled filter submodule removed from the board. There's 4 or 5 capacitors on these. The Pro DGXs seem to have 5. One of the capacitors was later replaced with something else. So we're going to do the 4075 enhancement kit, which changes the capacitors and a few other components to fix the cutoff frequency. And then while I have this removed, I'm also going to change the quad Norton op amp that this filter uses. I've seen them as a failure mode, and because the filter is very difficult to get to. You got to remove all the boards on that side of the keyboard to get that VCF board off. Then you've got to remove this submodule, and these pins can only take so much soldering and resoldering and bending and unbending before they'll break. So I'm going to change that op amp while I have this out, just to make the synthesizer more reliable for whoever winds up owning it. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put the board back, the submodule back in, and then reassemble the boards into the synthesizer. So we've completed the recap of the entire keyboard, and one problem we were having before was we could hear some notes crackling when they were sustaining, and the recap seems to have resolved that. So there's no more crackling during the note playing, and that was resolved just with a recap.